Oh, we going in tonight. We going in tonight. What up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. You here with your boy, Mr. Z, 6 foot of TV. And tonight we going in. Tonight we're gonna be talking about something I 5 things that I wish I would have knew in my 20s. This ain't just something that I read out of a book. These are lessons that I paid for with my time, my money, and my relationships, and also the missed opportunities that I had. So as you're watching, I just want you to drop in the chat one thing that you wish you would have knew in your 20s. First things first, the dating and relationship mistakes that I wish that I knew. When I was younger, I used to think that love was enough. I thought that if you cared about somebody so much that everything would work itself out. What I learned about this is that communication, boundaries, and choosing the right person matters just as much as the love. Because without that, you're only going to run into hard times. And I've definitely had those when it comes to relationships. Now, don't get me wrong. I've definitely had some great women, but I definitely had some bad apples that spoiled the whole tree. That's a fact. Now, sometimes we can ignore the red flags, and I think everybody does. This is the part of growing and learning that we have to get through is the red flags, you know. But sometimes looking back, I would have definitely made my decisions based on my peace and the things that I want, and definitely not based off of an emotion that I'm feeling and going past the red flags. So if you ever had a relationship that you were in and you blew past those red flags, I want you to type that in the chat, man. Put peace in the chat if you ever had something like that. I'll, let's get it. Let's get it. The second thing is my relationship with money. Man, how many people out there, man, got to the bag? You got to the bag, but you blew it quicker than you got it. This happens way too often, especially for us. With this color paint job, we're not really taught financial literacy. This is something that has to be instilled in us, and we have to learn this ourselves. So the second lesson that I learned is money. I made money, but I didn't know how to keep it. Nobody teaches you how to make it or the processes of building wealth. So these two things, nobody teaches us. So yeah, I used to think I was Jay-Z. I moved out to Vegas when I was 23 years old. Made some really good money. Used to get limos to the clubs, and you really couldn't tell me nothing back in the day. But knowing what I know now, I didn't have the right mentor, the right people in front of me to really teach me about wealth, or building a business, or just any OG that I can look up, because everybody's going through the same thing, same problems. So if I could go back and talk to myself in my 20s, I definitely would say this. I would have definitely went back, put a budget together, avoid any unnecessary debt, stop buying things that you can't afford, stop doing these car payments, um, stay within your budget, not going out to eat every day at these restaurants. Don't gamble, don't go out to the casino. These are all things that's here to suck us dry, man. And once the well is dry, it's dry. Ain't no water coming out of it. you know? So if I could say one thing, what's one financial mistake that you made? Let me know in the chat, man. I definitely appreciate y'all for being here tonight, man. Rocking with your boy. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Number 3, I think investing earlier, and what I mean by that is if I had started investing in my 20s, Even small accounts, it would have made a huge difference even today. I tell you, we laugh at people that work at McDonald's, Walmart, these smaller food chains or retail stores. But guess what? Did you know if you were 18 years old and you started investing into the company stock, setting up a 401k with a company match, in 20 years, you will be able to retire from Walmart. You'll be able to retire from McDonald's, fully invested into the company. This means now you can take your 401k and you can go out and start a business. You can go do the things that you want to do. See, these are things that we're not taught. We're taught to, oh yeah, you don't make as much money as me, or I got it, so I'm gonna go flex it. How everybody does with the phone bill. The loaf of bread, they got the phone bill. Everybody want to hold it up to their head. Man, that's the stupidest shit that I've ever seen in my life. People that are doing that, that's for an image, and you're not going to keep money like that. So one thing that you should start to do is learn financial literacy. I invested into some books, invested my time into learning the stock market. I can honestly say that, I learned how to trade options. A lot of people don't even know what that is, and if you're working for, any company in the S&P 500, which is America's top 500 companies, these are all companies that do include for you to be invested into their stock. So if you're not doing it, I encourage you to do it. I am nowhere near a financial advisor, but I can definitely tell you, I do have people with 7 figures, 8 figures asking me questions on what they should do with their money. And, I look at them like, why is this guy asking me? But I understand that, some people, they know how to make money. They don't know how to necessarily keep it. So we all look to everyone. You're going to look to those people that do have knowledge, because there's no way that you could be a millionaire and know every single thing. It doesn't work like that. You may be excelled in this area right here, but in other areas you may be lacking. So it's not about how much money that you have. This is definitely a marathon, not a race. Excuse me, not a sprint. So yeah, going back, I would have invested into stocks. I would have got more invested into real estate and starting a business being young. So number 4, I want to talk to you. The parenting. This is a big one for me. I think this is a super huge one. And shout out to all the mothers and fathers out there. Shout out to all the parents out there that's going through the struggle of being a parent, because there's definitely no manuscript to this, man. You got to really get in there, dig in, make mistakes, mess up, try to do the best that you can as a parent, and it's hard because sometimes you should be playing on the same team, but it's like, you got that other parent, they're throwing the ball and you trying to hit it. And we should be playing on the same team. Like, man, are we on the same team? But what I definitely noticed was this as a parent, kids don't just need money. They need your time, they need your attention, and they need your presence. If I can go back, I would have definitely spent more time, more intentional time, creating those memories with my son, my daughter, spending more time as a family with their mother, and doing things differently. I used to think like, I watch a lot of the older generations and how they used to talk to us, and I noticed, a lot of times, the older generation, they like to say you young people, but they like to talk at you. They don't talk to you. When you're growing up as a kid, of course, we don't want to hear anything, right? We want to live life. You want to be active, but you know, um, a lot of the times, it's like, people want you to follow suit on what they know. Oh, I didn't do this as a kid, so you shouldn't do it. I think every kid has their own mind, their own program. If I play football, I expect you to play football or basketball or run track, or I expect you to do this. And that's not the way this works. Every kid has their own mind, their own goals, presence, dreams, and you just need to be there to encourage them as a parent. So this is definitely something that I've learned from trials and tribulations, from being myself. And I'm definitely happy to be here and say, you know, good luck to all the parents out there. But if there's one thing that you can go back in your 20s and tell, the younger you about parenting, what would that be? Put that in the comments. Yeah, yeah. And I got you. I got you. I think the number 5 thing that we got is, family. The last thing is family. You know, Life moves fast. We spend years chasing money, careers, success, you know? But then one day we realize that the people we love, they starting to get older and money comes and goes. When I was younger, I always used to think, you know, I always wanted to travel. I used to started traveling young, and only thing that I wanted to do was get away from where I'm from. That was my number one goal. And getting into my careers, finding myself, discovering myself, who I am, where I want to be. Just figuring out life. I look back and I see my grandmother. She's almost a century, man. She's almost a brick, almost 100. You know, and looking back, man, I just wish I could go back and spend more time with her. In the past. I definitely put my career above a lot of family time, which is hey, what I needed to do at the time. But I tell you, man, this is something that hurt me. The connection, even with my own brothers. I think we would be even more tighter. But everybody has their own mind. But as far as me talking to my younger self, you need to go back, spend more family time, man. There's precious moments. And I'll tell you, when you get in trouble, who the first person you calling? Who's the first person that you calling? I know it ain't Ghostbusters, you know? So, family is definitely important, man. If you guys have any family that means anything to you, man, I want you to drop that in the chat and say family. Family is definitely important, man. So yeah, man. So these are my 5 biggest lessons. If you're in your 20s, start now. If you're in your 30s and 40s, you're still young. It's not too late. But and if you're older than me, I'd love to hear what advice you can give a younger generation like me. Drop your biggest life lesson in the comment section. If you got value from this conversation, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and share this live stream with someone who needs to hear this message, man. I appreciate every single one of y'all, and let's keep growing together. But before we go, I just want to say, man, I thank y'all for all the support, for all y'all being here, rocking with Big Mr. Z, 6 for the TV. Y'all know how we do. Gone.